You can be pulled under before you even understand what's happening.
Which is exactly why today we are exploring these hidden power dynamics that dictate everyday life. We're looking at how we navigate workplace politics, difficult bosses, toxic friendships, boundaries, and, dating.
The minefield.
Welcome to The Debate. I think we tend to view human relationships as operating on this perfectly level playing field. Like, we assume that if you just work hard, you get promoted.
Right. Or that if you're just, honest in a relationship, you automatically build trust.
Exactly. We want to believe that social dynamics are driven purely by goodwill, transparency, and merit. It's incredibly comforting to think that people react only to our best intentions. But just like gravity, there is an absolute, undeniable force operating beneath the surface. It's this invisible pull that governs our interactions, whether we want to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah, and when you step into the real world, like a highly competitive corporate office, or a complicated family dynamic, or even just the modern dating scene, you suddenly feel that pull. You realize very quickly that people aren't just reacting to what you say or what you do. They are reacting to leverage.
Right, leverage.
They're reacting to perception, status, and quite frequently their own deeply rooted insecurities. It is a landscape of hidden currents. And those currents can be, frankly, incredibly treacherous if you don't realize you're swimming in them. You can be pulled under before you even understand what's happening.
Which is exactly why today we are exploring these hidden power dynamics that dictate everyday life. We're looking at how we navigate workplace politics, difficult bosses, toxic friendships, boundaries, and, dating.
The minefield.
It really is a minefield. And the foundation of today's discourse emerges from the source material regarding the 48 laws of power. We're going to be specifically focusing on how 8 core laws apply to our modern, everyday scenarios.
And the central disagreement we are exploring today is this. Is mastering these power dynamics a necessary tool for self-protection and, say, empathetic influence, or does the deliberate application of these laws cross the line into toxic manipulation?
Right, and I will argue that understanding and utilizing these dynamics is a crucial form of social intelligence. It's an absolute defense against being exploited by those around you.
And I will argue that actively practicing these laws fundamentally degrades genuine human connection. It relies on deception and the calculated control of other people.
Okay, so to understand my position, you really have to accept that power is an unavoidable part of human nature. It's present in every single relationship, from a marriage to a boardroom.
I don't disagree that it's present, but
drawing from the source material, I view the laws of power not as inherently evil, but as essential rules of engagement for defense. By learning these rules, you avoid the naive mistakes that lead to, being fired or exploited by business partners, or just emotionally drained by toxic friends.
Well,
let me just add this one point. We have all seen good, highly competent people get passed over or mistreated simply because they completely misunderstood the psychological game being played around them. Mastering these dynamics allows a person to build alliances and influence others through a profound empathy and an understanding of human psychology, not through blunt coercion.
Look, I fully acknowledge that power dynamics exist, okay? And that naivete is a massive liability in today's world. But actively applying these rules transforms life into a cynical game of chess.
Is it cynical, though, or just realistic?
It's cynical. The tactics described in the material, intentionally concealing your true intentions, deliberately playing on people's emotional voids, and strategically manufacturing absence to make people anxious, that is the very definition of manipulation. True influence requires authenticity. It requires vulnerability.
But vulnerability can get you crushed if you're dealing with the wrong person.
Sure, but these laws rely on masking your true self entirely and treating other human beings as pawns to be managed. You might gain temporary leverage, but you sacrifice genuine trust. And trust is the actual foundation of any meaningful human relationship.
Okay, let's ground this. Let's look at the environment where these hierarchies are usually the most explicit, right? The workplace.
Oh, absolutely. The classic battleground.
Exactly. Think about the classic scenario of the ambitious junior employee who comes into a new company. Their instinct is to demonstrate their brilliance, to solve every problem, and show upper management exactly how capable they are.
Which seems logical.
Right, but the source material warns against this with Law 1, never outshine the master. The psychology here is fascinating, honestly. People in positions of authority desperately want to feel secure in their position. If you flaunt your talents too aggressively, you don't win their favor.
You threaten them.
Yes, you inadvertently trigger what the text calls a monstrous insecurity. Making a boss feel comfortably superior isn't about diminishing your own worth. It's about understanding the evolutionary psychology of hierarchy. You prevent them from acting out of fear.
Okay, but
Wait, and you couple that with Law 11. Learn to keep people dependent on you. If you intertwine your unique skills so deeply into the company's operations that removing you causes immense pain, you ensure your survival. You aren't replaced by someone cheaper.
okay, I really have to push back on your definition of survival there, because the mechanism you're describing is incredibly toxic to a functioning environment.
How is job security toxic?
Because engineering dependence is inherently manipulative. It stifles true collaboration. If your primary strategy for job security is to intentionally hoard knowledge so that your team cannot function without you, you are trapping them. You aren't building a functional professional environment or proving your merit. You're building a psychological hostage situation where your colleagues are paralyzed without your input.
Hostage situation. Come on, isn't making yourself indispensable simply the professional equivalent of being the only structural architect who knows the load-bearing capacity of a complex building?
No, I don't think it is.
You aren't trapping the client in a hostage situation. You are providing highly specialized, irreplaceable value that demands respect. You're ensuring that your expertise is properly valued in a corporate market that otherwise treats workers as entirely disposable.
But see, if the architect documents his work and shares the blueprints, he is valuable but replaceable. What this text advises is essentially to hide the blueprints. The intent and the mechanism matter deeply here. The source material points out that the goal of this dependence is explicitly to make others depend on you out of fear of the consequences of losing you, rather than out of genuine respect for your work.
It's about leverage.
Yes, but the text explicitly states that depending on an emotion as subtle as love or friendship makes you insecure, and that fear is a lever you can actually control. I'm sorry, but that crosses a massive ethical line. You move from providing highly specialized value into holding deliberate leverage over someone's professional welfare. You are purposefully engineering their helplessness just to serve your ego.
All right, let's take this out of the corporate boardroom. Let's look at our intimate social circles, our friendships, and the modern dating scene, because these underlying psychological mechanisms absolutely apply there as well. Human habituation is a real phenomenon.
Well, this is actually where I find the application of these rules even more troubling. When we look at Law 16, use absence to increase respect and honor, we are looking at the literal commodification of human affection.
Commodification? That's a bit strong.
But it is. The material argues that too much circulation makes your price go down, and that you should withdraw to create value through scarcity. Now, in the science of economics, sure, supply and demand makes perfect sense. But in dating or in a close friendship,
People value what they don't have.
but purposefully withdrawing your presence, waiting artificially long to return a text, or disappearing just to create scarcity, that is a manipulative game. It is explicitly designed to play on a partner's abandonment insecurities to make them crave you more.
Look, if you're listening to this and thinking, oh, that sounds like playing games, you have to look at the underlying neurobiology of how humans perceive value. It is not about playing a malicious game, it is fundamentally about the psychology of habituation and establishing boundaries.
Boundaries and scarcity are very different things.
Not always. The human brain literally filters out constant stimuli. If you are perpetually available, if you have zero boundaries on your time, human nature dictates that you will eventually become a habit and be taken for granted.
I guess I see what you're saying about availability, but
The dopamine hit of connection requires space to reset. Taking a step back isn't manipulating their insecurity, it's just allowing the natural rhythm of attraction to breathe. Furthermore, if we're talking about boundaries in relationships, we have to talk about the ultimate boundary, which is Law 10, infection. Avoid the unhappy and unlucky.
right. Are you referring to the concept of the infector?
Yes, exactly. The text details this concept brilliantly. We all know these people, highly charismatic individuals who perpetually present themselves as victims, but they consistently drag everyone around them into their chaos.
Right. The energy vampires.
Exactly. Think of the friend who is always in a crisis, always needing to be saved, yet never takes your advice. Setting a firm, uncompromising boundary against that kind of person, using absence to protect yourself, isn't manipulation. It is pure self-preservation.
I hear you, but consider the profound lack of empathy embedded in that framework. If a friend is going through a difficult time, does this logic encourage us to just abandon them?
No, that's not.
Are we supposed to run a psychological credit check on everyone we meet, and the moment their emotional balance goes into the red, we just cut ties? If someone is suffering, this rule essentially tells us to run away so we don't catch their bad luck. It treats human suffering as a contagion to be avoided, rather than a reality to be met with compassion.
But you are missing a vital distinction the source material makes regarding the mechanism of emotional contagion. We must absolutely help victims of true misfortune, the friend who loses a job or experiences a sudden tragedy. Of course you help them.
Okay.
But we must quarantine ourselves from those whose misery is a self-inflicted, cyclical pattern. The infector is someone who has this deep inner emptiness, and they draw disaster upon themselves repeatedly as a way to gain attention and control.
I agree, those people exist, but
If you try to save them, you don't elevate them. Their intense emotional pathology literally pulls you down into their maelstrom. Recognizing the difference between someone experiencing genuine bad luck and someone with a destructive psychological pathology is a crucial piece of emotional intelligence. If you don't recognize the mechanism of that infection, you precipitate your own disaster.
okay, but notice how that shifts the burden of trust in our daily lives. If setting boundaries dictates who we spend time with by actively categorizing them as, safe or infectious, the next logical step is analyzing how we communicate with the people we do allow into our lives. And this brings us squarely to the question of authenticity.
Which is why the text emphasizes Law 9, win through your actions, never through argument, and Law 38, think as you like, but behave like others. I see this as peak social intelligence.
Really? Peak social intelligence?
Yes! Let's look at the mechanism of an argument. Why do arguments so rarely change minds? Because words are incredibly slippery. When you argue with someone, your words pass through the filter of their insecurities, their pride, their mood in that moment.
Well, sure, communication is complex.
But the psychological backfire effect means that the harder you argue, the more they entrench themselves. Any triumph you think you gain is a Pyrrhic victory because you've just stirred up hidden resentment. Demonstrating your point through undeniable action, however, bypasses that filter entirely. It's actually deeply respectful.
I don't disagree that actions speak louder than words. That's a truism. But coupling that with Law 38, the directive to think as you like but behave like others, demands that you live in complete false front.
It's not a false front,
It is. The text advises mouthing conventional ideas you don't actually believe, just to blend in with the tribe. If you are doing that, you are living a lie. You are actively depriving your relationships of genuine friction.
Friction isn't always good.
But friction, disagreement, debate, the clashing of unique perspectives is how people actually get to know each other. The material suggests hiding your true thoughts to avoid isolation, but what kind of connection do you really have if it's based on a completely fabricated, inconspicuous persona? You're literally hiding in plain sight.
Okay, but the reality of tribal psychology is much harsher than we like to admit. The text warns that flaunting unorthodox ways is almost universally interpreted by the group as a threat. Humans are hardwired to perceive nonconformity as a danger to the tribe's cohesion.
Maybe historically, but
Even today, when you flaunt how different or unconventional you are, it isn't perceived as authentic by the group. It's perceived as a demonstration of superiority. Blending in externally is actually a way to show respect for the group's comfort. You aren't erasing your true self.
you're just hiding it.
No, you are simply saving your true originality and your genuine, unfiltered opinions for the tolerant friends who have proven they can actually appreciate them, rather than forcing your uniqueness on people whose psychological makeup will cause them to feel threatened by it. It's just about knowing your audience.
But if you are constantly modulating your personality to manage the insecurities of your audience, you inevitably move from protecting yourself to actively driving outcomes. You move from defense to offense. And this is where the mask really slips for me regarding the difference between influence and manipulation.
Where do you draw the line?
Well, look at Law 43, work on the hearts and minds of others. It is detailing the purest form of manipulation. It explicitly advises playing on people's intellectual weaknesses and their primary emotions.
Emotions like love and hate.
Love, hate, jealousy, all to soften them up and reduce their rational control. It literally tells you to find their psychological voids and exploit them to make them your loyal pawn.
Okay, I completely understand why the word exploit comes to mind, but I view this as the direct antidote
antidote to coercion. Think about how we typically try to influence people. We push, we demand, we coerce.
Which is also bad.
Right, because coercion, forcing someone to do something against their will, always creates a mechanical and emotional reaction that will eventually work against you. Seduction, in the broad psychological sense outlined in the text, means finding the key that unlocks a stranger's heart by acknowledging their unique individual psychology.
Acknowledging or hacking.
That requires immense empathy. You have to step outside your own ego, stop arguing your own prejudices, and truly understand what the other person holds dear, what they lack, what they fear. Couple that with Law 28. Enter action with boldness. Hesitation infects people with awkward energy and doubt. Boldness makes others feel at ease because it's less self-conscious and provides a clear direction.
Okay, but listen to the mechanism you are describing. If you are systematically customizing your personality and your actions to perfectly mirror someone else's emotional voids just to move them in your direction, isn't that just a psychological Trojan horse? You aren't genuinely connecting with them. You are hacking their operating system. You are looking for their deepest insecurities, their thumbs grew, as the material actually notes, and turning it to bypass their rational defenses. That is not empathy. Empathy is feeling with someone. This is feeling someone out to use their emotions against them. It is the calculated leveraging of human vulnerability.
Look, you are assuming the outcome is always nefarious, but the mechanism of influence is neutral. If you use that deep psychological understanding to guide a difficult, stubborn boss toward a decision that ultimately benefits the whole team, or if you use it to help a family member avoid making a disastrous life mistake,
The ends justify the means.
the mechanism is exactly the same, but the result is profoundly positive. The boldness eliminates the awkward gaps where doubt creeps in, and the deep emotional attunement ensures your message is actually received. You are finally speaking their language, instead of arrogantly forcing them to speak yours.
But the methodology relies on a foundation of deception. If you are deliberately softening someone up by playing on their need for validation, you are treating them as an object to be maneuvered, not an equal to be respected.
I disagree that it's inherently disrespectful.
The immense danger here is that once you start viewing every single interaction, every workplace dynamic, every friendship, every date through the lens of leverage, scarcity, and emotional voids, you lose the capacity for spontaneous, authentic connection. You become completely isolated in your own tactical brilliance.
Wow. Well, I think it's time to summarize our positions in light of this discussion. My perspective remains that the laws we've explored are fundamental, unvarnished observations of human nature. By understanding the mechanisms behind them, we protect ourselves from the toxic behaviors of others.
Fair enough.
We learn to navigate a complex, often unfair world with emotional intelligence, boldness, and a profound understanding of human psychology. We learn not to blindly trigger the ego of an insecure boss. We learn how to establish boundaries so we don't get dragged down by an infectious, chronically dramatic friend. And we learn to lead with decisive action and empathetic influence, rather than endless, resentful argument. It's about operating effectively in reality, rather than the idealized, frictionless world we might wish for.
And my concluding view is that while recognizing these power dynamics is absolutely crucial for self-defense, consciously deploying these laws risks turning the user into the exact type of manipulator they fear, treating your absence as a calculated tool to manufacture desire, engineering workplace dependence out of a fear of replacement, and strategically leveraging the emotional vulnerabilities of the people around you. These tactics fundamentally degrade human connection. True influence should stem from transparency and genuine value, not from the strategic exploitation of human frailties and insecurities.
However, despite our deep philosophical disagreements on the application and morality of these laws, I think we both acknowledge a vital shared point of convergence here. Naivete is dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Recognizing when power games are being played around you is an absolute necessity in everyday life. Whether it is a difficult boss hoarding information to keep you subordinate, a romantic partner leveraging their absence to make you anxious, or an infectious friend drawing you into their perpetual chaos, you have to be able to read the board.
Right.
If you don't understand the mechanisms of power, you will inevitably be played by those who do.
And that reflects the tremendous value of viewing our daily interactions through multiple lenses. The source material holds even more layers to explore regarding human behavior. It forces us to look in the mirror and critically question the undercurrents of our own relationships.
It really does. It asks us to examine our own motives just as closely, and perhaps just as ruthlessly as we examine the motives of others. We have to ask ourselves why we seek leverage in the first place.
So, we leave it to you, the listener, to form your own conclusion. Think back to that invisible current of gravity we talked about at the start of our discourse. Now that you know the pull is there, how will you swim? Where is the line between empathetic influence and calculated manipulation drawn in your own life? Thank you for joining us on The Debate.